What if someone told you that money can buy lawyers, donations, and influence, but not a way out of one simple word: consequences? Today you are going to see how one arrogant sentence worth $50,000 in penalties and much more in reputation turns a routine traffic case into a public reckoning. Can we speed this up? I have a lunch reservation. The voice cuts through the hum of the courtroom before the clerk has even finished reading the case. Victoria Ashford, 23 years old, does not wait for permission to speak. She sits at the defense table like it is her private office, one leg crossed over the other, rose gold phone in hand, scrolling as if this municipal court were a lobby she is forced to endure. Her shoe does not tap nervously, it taps impatiently. Red soles flash under the table with each sharp click against the floor, a tiny metronome of entitlement echoing in the room. On the bench, Judge Frank Caprio looks up. 78 years old, silver hair, glasses perched low on his nose. He has spent 37 years behind that wooden barrier, watching people face the quiet weight of their choices. He has seen anger and tears, jokes and excuses. He has seen people who have nothing but still manage to bring respect with them. Victoria, he realizes, has brought something else. Case of Ashford, the clerk finishes. Speeding in a school zone, third violation in 6 months. Victoria's attorney, Marcus Pemberton, smooths his tie and offers the judge a polished smile. His suit costs more than most used cars that roll through this courtroom. "Good morning, Your Honor," he says. "Marcus Pemberton for the defense. We have filed a motion to dismiss based on procedural irregularities regarding the citation." Victoria drops her phone on the table with a clatter that slices through his sentence. "This is ridiculous," she says, not bothering to lower her voice. "My father donates to this city every year. We should not even be here." The words land with a dull thud in the room. A woman in the gallery exhales sharply. One of the clerks pauses, pen hovering above a notepad. Judge Caprio removes his glasses and folds them slowly, as if giving the moment extra time to breathe. He does not raise his voice. He does not bang the gavel. "Ms. Ashford," he says quietly, "I'm going to ask you to do something that I suspect is difficult for you." She looks up for the first time, bored curiosity in her eyes. "And what is that?" "To listen." For half a heartbeat, her heel stops tapping. Then she rolls her eyes, just enough that the gesture is visible to the first few rows but still deniable. The judge opens the file in front of him. "This is your third speeding violation in a school zone within 6 months, he says, "all during active school hours, all well above the limit." "Minor infractions," Pemberton cuts in smoothly. "Nonviolent, no actual harm done. Before this, my client's record is clean." The judge raises one finger. The interruption dies mid-sentence. "Before we talk about your motion," he says, his tone still calm, "we are going to talk about context. Because these are not 3 isolated incidents, Ms. Ashford. They form a pattern, and patterns tell stories." He reaches to the side and lifts a slim, separate folder, marked with a piece of red tape. The color stands out against the beige of routine paperwork. "Your father is generous," Caprio continues. "Last year he donated $200,000 to various city programs. That is commendable. But generosity does not rewrite traffic law." Victoria's chin lifts a fraction, as if the number itself is a shield. "After your second violation," the judge says, tapping the red-marked folder, "a mother wrote to this court, not through an attorney, not through a lobbyist, in her own hand." He holds up a letter, the paper slightly creased from being folded and unfolded more than once. "Shall I read it?" Victoria shrugs, but there is a tightness at the corners of her mouth now. Her lawyer attempts a light chuckle. "With respect, Your Honor, an unverified letter." "What this mother wrote," the judge says, looking over the rim of his glasses, "will decide how I see you today." Before we hear her words, take a second to subscribe to this channel and hit the like button, because what comes next is going to make even your most cynical friend lean closer to the screen. He unfolds the letter. The courtroom seems to lean with him. "Dear Judge," he reads, "my daughter Emily crosses the street every afternoon to get to Blessed Sacrament Elementary. Last week a silver car came so fast through the school zone that she froze in the crosswalk. A crossing guard pulled her back. The car never slowed down. It did not stop. It just kept going." He lowers the page. "You drive a silver Mercedes, Miss Ashford," he says. "Personalized plate, correct?" Her lawyer interjects quickly. There are many silver cars in the city, Your Honor. Caprio nods to the bailiff. Play the school zone footage from March mid-afternoon. The camera at the crosswalk. The lights dim slightly as a monitor comes to life. The image is grainy but clear enough. Children with oversized backpacks clustered at a curb, a crossing guard in a bright vest stepping into the road, one arm raised. The sign for Blessed Sacrament Elementary hangs in the background, the letters faded by too many winters. For a moment, nothing happens. Then a car blasts into frame, a blur of silver slicing across the screen. The crossing guard yanks a child back. The car passes close enough that you can almost feel the rush of air, even through the video. Freeze, the judge says. The still frame catches the license plate mid-frame. The bailiff zooms in until the letters fill the screen. VCTRYONE. Victory 1, the judge reads aloud. That is your plate, Ms. Ashford? Victoria's hand goes to her throat. I did not hit anyone, she says. I did not see them. It was an accident. A near tragedy, the judge replies. One that did not happen because someone else was paying attention when you were not. A man in the back row pushes himself to his feet. He uses a simple black cane, his movements careful but practiced. The judge notices the motion immediately. Sir, he says, please state your name. Robert Jennings, Your Honor, the man answers. His voice is steady, but his hand tightens around the cane. Retired Army. I am the crossing guard in that video. The room shifts, its attention snapping from the screen to the man standing there. He wears a plain jacket, but there's a small pin on his lapel, the kind people earn, not buy. A thin scar traces a pale line from his temple into his hair. Judge Caprio gestures to the front. Mr. Jennings, please come forward. Robert walks down the aisle, each step measured. For a moment the courtroom is silent except for the light tap of his cane against the floor. He stops near the witness stand, but the judge does not make him climb into the elevated box. He lets him remain on the ground, at the same level as everyone else. Mr. Jennings, Caprio says, what happened that day? Robert's eyes flick briefly toward Victoria, then back to the judge. I had a group of kids waiting to cross, he says. We checked the light, we looked both ways, and I stepped out with the sign. Then I heard an engine. He swallows once. It was close. Close enough that I felt the heat from the hood on my hand when it passed. If I had been one step slower, or if that girl had been one step farther out, he does not finish the sentence. And the car? The judge asks. Never slowed, Robert says. Never stopped. I saw the plate as it passed, though. It is hard to forget that word when you are standing in the road. He glances at Victoria again. Victory, the gallery murmurs. The judge lets the sound ripple and then settle. Ms. Ashford, he says, you have heard from the mother. You have heard from the crossing guard. Do you have anything you would like to say to Mr. Jennings? Victoria lifts her chin. Her voice is sharper now. He is exaggerating, she says. If it were really that dangerous, there would have been a report. People overreact when they see a nice car. For a second, something flickers across Robert's face. Surprise, then something like disappointment. He does not argue. He simply sets his jaw a little tighter and rests both hands on the cane. The judge exhales slowly, as if confirming something to himself. Very well, he says. Then we will let more than memory speak. Ms. Ashford, the judge says, the road does not care how expensive your car is, and the law does not care how expensive your lawyer is, but it does care about patterns. He closes the red-taped folder and opens another, thicker one. The paper inside is stacked high, held together with clips that strain a little at the edges. In the last 6 months, he continues, his voice picking up a steady rhythm, you have been cited for speeding, illegal parking, blocking fire lanes, ignoring crosswalks, and stopping in front of hydrants. Different officers, different neighborhoods, same name. He looks at her over the top of the file. Do you remember all of these stops? Victoria gives a small, dismissive shake of her head. Not specifically, she says. I drive a lot. People make mistakes. That is why there are warnings. These were not warnings, the judge replies. They were citations, 47 of them. Her lawyer jumps in. Many of which were dismissed on review, Your Honor. Clearly the system determined they lacked merit. Caprio taps the folder. Or something else happened. He nods to the clerk. We subpoenaed communication records related to your traffic stops and to your family's interactions with certain precinct officers. Phone logs, text messages, internal notes. We are not going to read every line. We are going to study the pattern. He takes a page from the top of the stack and hands a copy to the clerk. Please read the first message. The clerk adjusts the microphone. From Victoria to a friend, she reads. Officer pulled me over again. I told him to call my father's guy at the department. Let the little people wait in line. A few people in the gallery shift in their seats. Someone exhales sharply through their teeth. Next one, the judge says. From Victoria to her father, the clerk continues. If they stop me one more time, I am going to remind them who pays for their uniforms. This city owes us. The last 3 words hang in the air like a bad smell. Context, Pemberton says, forcing a smile that does not quite reach his eyes. Young people vent. They say things they do not fully mean. We have all written messages in frustration. The judge raises an eyebrow. Frustration reveals more than courtesy ever will, he says. He begins to read from other pages himself now, his voice firm and unhurried. Officer notes from a late-night stop. Driver stated her family could make this go away. Requested we contact captain directly. Internal email from that captain. Family is a major donor. See what we can do. Follow-up entry. Citation voided. He flips to another. Different district, different officer, same pattern. Ticket written, phone calls made, ticket gone. As he speaks, the scene almost directs itself. A quick mental montage of flashing lights, a silver car at different curbs, hands passing paper, phones pressed to ears. Each snippet might seem small on its own. Together, they form a chain. In 6 months, the judge says, 47 citations went into the system with your name on them. 47 disappeared before they ever reached a hearing like this. His words come faster now, a steady drumbeat. School zones, hospital entrances, residential streets. Each time an officer tried to say, slow down, this matters. Each time, someone with a higher pay grade and a closer relationship to your family decided those warnings did not apply. The tempo builds, fact after fact, like a conductor driving an orchestra toward a crescendo. Then he stops. But the word hangs alone. There is something else. Each syllable lands with its own quiet weight. The room, accustomed to the rising rhythm of his speech, stumbles internally at the sudden slowdown. Even those who were ready to call this obvious rich girl behavior feel their attention reset. He sets the stack of papers aside, as if pushing away a pile of symptoms to reveal the deeper condition. These documents show how you use influence, he says, but there is one recording that shows how you truly think. Victoria's fingers tighten around the edge of the defense table. What recording? The judge does not answer her. He looks instead at Robert, who is still standing near the front, hands resting on his cane. Mr. Jennings, he says, his voice gentler, after that day at the crosswalk, did you receive any communication related to the incident? Robert nods once. Yes, Your Honor, he says. There was a voicemail on my phone that night. I kept it. Did you recognize the caller? At the time, no, Robert replies. Later, when I saw her in the video, I matched the voice. The judge nods to the bailiff. Please play Mr. Jennings's voicemail for the court. A portable speaker is placed on the edge of the bench, a simple black box with a blinking light. The bailiff presses a button. For a moment, there is only soft static and the low hum of the courtroom's ventilation system. Then, a young woman's voice fills the room, tinny but unmistakable. Next time, watch where you stand, the voice says. Do you have any idea who you nearly stepped in front of? You do not talk to me like that. Pemberton shifts in his seat. Victoria's eyes flick toward the speaker, then away. I own this street, the recording continues. I own this town. People like you move when people like me drive. A few heads in the gallery turn slowly toward Victoria. Her face has gone pale, but the worst part is that you can tell she recognizes every word. This is not a deepfake. This is not a misquote. Call whoever you want, the recorded voice says. I own you. The voicemail ends with a quiet click. Silence falls. Real silence. There's no rustling of papers, no staged coughs, no whispered asides. It is as if even the air conditioner decides, for 12 stretched seconds, to hold its breath. Time does not stop, but attention does. Every person in that room is frozen in the same moment, replaying the sentence they just heard. I own you. Those 3 words echo against the wooden walls, against the faded blue paint, against the unspoken things people bring into court with them. Victoria stares straight ahead, her jaw clenched. She opens her mouth once, but nothing comes out. Somewhere behind her, her father shifts in his seat, but even he says nothing. Judge Caprio does not rush to fill the quiet. He lets it do its work. Then, finally, he leans forward slightly, folding his hands on the bench. Ms. Ashford, he says softly, you just heard yourself speak to a man who spent years standing between danger and people he had never met. A man who now spends his mornings standing between moving vehicles and children with backpacks bigger than their bodies. He nods toward Robert. When he tried to protect those children, you told him, I own you. You told yourself you own this street, this town, that people move for you, not because the light changes, but because of your last name. Victoria inhales sharply. I was angry, she says. He yelled at me in public. Everyone was staring. You cannot take one message and act like it defines my whole life. The problem, the judge replies, is not that you were angry, it is what your anger reveals. It reveals what you believe about who matters and who does not. Her heel begins to tap again, faster now, less like a metronome and more like a tremor. This is absurd, she snaps. You are turning a handful of tickets into a morality play. You read texts that were never meant to be public. You are dragging my family's name through the mud. She grabs the motion to dismiss from the table, the stack thick with legal language and signatures. You want a show? Here. In one sudden motion, she thrusts the pages toward the bench. The top sheets fan out, drifting through the air like startled birds. One strikes the edge of the judge's desk and slides across, coming to rest near his hand. Others scatter onto the floor at his feet. Gasps ripple through the room. The bailiff takes a half step forward, then stops at the judge's barely perceptible shake of the head. Victoria is standing now, breathing hard. Sign whatever you want, she says. We both know nothing really happens to people like me. For a heartbeat, everything holds. The papers, the people, the moment itself. Then the judge reaches down and picks up the nearest page with deliberate care, as if handling something delicate. He aligns the edges, straightens the stack she just exploded, and places it in front of him. You're right about one thing, Ms. Ashford, he says, his voice almost gentle. Something is going to be signed today. He reaches for his pen. The pen rests between his fingers, a simple blue ballpoint that suddenly feels like the heaviest object in the room. Mr. Pemberton, Judge Caprio says, not taking his eyes off the papers in front of him, you may want your client seated. The lawyer touches Victoria's sleeve. This time she sits, but her posture is rigid, the movement more like a controlled collapse than a voluntary decision. The glossy armor she wore into the courtroom has begun to crack, but the old reflexes are still there. Chin up, shoulders set, jaw tight. The judge aligns the pages she scattered, one edge to another, until the stack is neat again. It is a small act of order after her act of chaos. When you threw these documents at this bench, he says, you did more than disrespect a courtroom. You showed exactly how you see the people and institutions around you, as obstacles to be pushed aside when they slow you down. He looks at her now, steady and almost tired. But this room is not a drive-through window, he continues, and justice is not something you order, pay for, and take to go. Her fingers curl so tightly around the armrest that the knuckles turn white. Is this where you lecture me? She asks. Because if you are trying to make an example of me for the cameras, just say it. He studies her for a long beat. You think this is about embarrassment, he says. It is not. It is about alignment, between what you do and what you face. He uncaps the pen with a soft click. That sound, quiet as it is, lands harder than any gavel. In light of the evidence, he says, shifting into the precise cadence of someone reading a verdict, this court finds that a routine fine or dismissed citation would not only be inadequate, it would be unjust. It would tell every person in this city that laws are suggestions for some and commands for others. He signs the first page, the ink scratching across the paper in a slow, deliberate line. Ms. Ashford, he says, please stand to hear your sentence. She rises again, though this time she does not look taller for it. The gallery quiets to a level that feels almost unnatural, as if even the wooden benches are holding their breath. For repeated speeding in active school zones, the judge begins, for reckless conduct that nearly caused harm to a crossing guard and a child, for using influence to pressure officers and superiors into voiding citations, and for your demonstrated contempt toward this court and its process, I am imposing the following sanctions under this court's discretion. He holds her gaze, not to intimidate her, but to make sure she understands that every word is aimed squarely at her, not at some abstract idea of a defendant. First, he says, your driver's license is suspended for 30 days, effective immediately. You are not to operate any motor vehicle during that time, not your own, not rented, not borrowed. You will experience what it means to depend on others for something you took for granted. A flicker of panic crosses her face. Losing her car is not just inconvenience, it is losing control over her own schedule, the one thing she values almost as much as status. Second, he continues, you will pay a financial penalty of $50,000. That money will not go into a general fund. It will be directed specifically to pedestrian safety improvements near schools in this city. Crosswalks, signage, crossing guard equipment. In other words, you will help protect the people you put at risk. Her father shifts again in the gallery. For a man who measures his influence in donations, hearing the amount and the destination in the same sentence is a blow. Third, the judge says, you will complete 200 hours of community service over the next 30 days. That is roughly 7 hours per day, 6 days per week. Those hours are to be served at a local shelter for unhoused veterans within this jurisdiction. He glances at Robert. Men and women like Mr. Jennings, who once wore a uniform and now stand in other lines. You will not simply sign in and sit in a back office, he goes on. You will serve meals. You will clean common areas. You will listen when residents speak. You will write down the names and brief stories of at least 20 people you meet there and submit those accounts to this court at the end of your service. She swallows hard. The idea of scrubbing floors where others sleep is a world away from the leather interior of her car and the polished stone of her family's foyer. Fourth, he says, you will attend a driver responsibility and pedestrian safety course. During those sessions, you will hear directly from families affected by reckless driving. You will attend fully. No phone, no side conversations. If you violate that condition, your participation will be invalidated, and this sentence will be revisited. Her gaze flicks to the phone on the table, lying face down like a neutralized weapon. Fifth, he adds, you will meet with a counselor once per week for the duration of your license suspension to discuss entitlement, accountability, and risk perception. That is not a punishment, it is an opportunity. If you finish this month unchanged inside, then all of this will have been theater. I am not interested in theater. The list has structure now, practical, financial, emotional. It is not just about making her pay. It is about forcing her to live for a time in a different story. Victoria clenches her jaw. You cannot force me to feel anything, she says. No, he agrees, I cannot, but I can force you to stand still long enough that feeling becomes possible. He places the papers to the side as though the mechanical portion is complete. Then he looks back at her with a different kind of gravity. There is one more condition, he says. The room draws in. Even after such a long list, those words pull attention like a magnet. 2 weeks from today, he continues, you will return to this courtroom and deliver a public apology. You will stand where you are standing now and address Mr. Jennings, the families who trusted him with their children's safety, and this community. That apology will be recorded and made available to the public. Color floods her cheeks, an instinctive response she cannot hide. So you do want to show, she says bitterly. This is not about humiliation, he replies. This is about alignment between your private words and your public voice. You left a voicemail telling a man you owned him. 2 weeks from now, you will speak into a microphone and acknowledge that you were wrong. Before she can answer, he nods one more time to the bailiff. Play the last 10 seconds of the voicemail again, he says. The same crackle, the same voice. I own this street. I own this town. People like you move when people like me drive. I own you. As the echo of her arrogance fills the room again, another voice slips in under it, quiet, almost a whisper, but unmistakably the judge's. It does not replace her words. It threads through them. No one owns another person in this courtroom, his whisper says, barely louder than breath. The overlapping voices create a brief, jarring dissonance. Privilege on top, principle beneath, like two layers of sound that cannot occupy the same space without clashing. It is a pattern interrupt of its own kind, not just in pacing, but in meaning. When the audio stops, the judge's normal voice returns. This sentence is not designed to break you, Ms. Ashford, he says. It is designed to bend you toward something you have been speeding past for years: responsibility. The gavel falls once, crisp and final. Case continued for review in 2 weeks, he says. Court is in recess. The first morning at the shelter smells like burnt coffee and disinfectant. Victoria stands just inside the doorway, clutching a clipboard she does not really need. The sign above the entrance reads, Horizon House, Veterans Support Center. The letters are chipped at the edges, painted over more than once. No one here pays a branding agency to keep them perfect. Inside, the floor is scuffed linoleum instead of polished stone. The tables do not match. The chairs squeak when people shift their weight. A handwritten schedule is taped to the wall. Breakfast, intake, counseling, lights out. Victoria, a woman calls. She turns to see a staff member in a faded polo shirt and a name tag that has been clipped and unclipped so many times the plastic is cracked. The woman's eyes are tired but warm. That's me, Victoria says. You are the court placement, the woman replies, matter of fact. Good. We need hands more than we need opinions. Apron is there. Coffee station's running low. Start there. Smile. Ask names. Listen if they talk. That is the job. Victoria almost answers with something sarcastic, some reflexive remark about how she knows how to pour coffee, but the words stick. Instead, she ties on the plastic apron, picks up the pot, and steps into the dining area. The room is already filling. Men and women spread out at the tables, some with caps that bear the names of places she only knows from news headlines and war movies. A few talk quietly. Others eat in silence, eyes on their plates, as if conversation costs more energy than they can spare. Coffee? She asks the first table, forcing her voice to sound neutral. A man with a weathered face and a neatly trimmed beard looks up. Only if it will not evaporate my spoon, he says. She blinks, then realizes he is joking. No promises, she answers, and a small ripple of laughter moves around the table. As the hours crawl by, the work does what it always does to people who are used to delegating. It pulls her down to the level of tasks: lift, pour, wipe, carry, listen, repeat. By the second hour, her back aches from bending. By the third, she can feel sweat sticking the apron to her skin. No one here cares about her last name. They care if the coffee is hot and the plates are clean. Midway through the morning, she hears a familiar voice behind her. Careful with that pot, it says. You spill, and they will revoke your citizenship in here. She turns. Robert stands a few feet away, wearing jeans and a Horizon House sweatshirt. The cane is still there, but his stance is less guarded than it was in court. You work here? She asks before she can stop herself. I volunteer, he says. This place helped me when I did not know where else to go. Feels right to stick around. She fumbles briefly for something appropriate to say. How do you take your coffee? She asks instead. 2 sugars, he replies. No lecture. Against her will, she smiles. I will do my best. The days begin to blur into one another. Morning rides arranged because she cannot drive. Early alarms she cannot snooze without throwing off the entire schedule. The same chipped letters on the sign, the same squeak of linoleum, the same faces at the tables. Only they are not the same, not once you know the names behind them. James, who says he sleeps better in a chair than in a bed because beds remind him of hospital cots. Marisol, who keeps a little notebook tucked inside her jacket filled with poems she tells no one about. Theo, whose fingers start tapping a rhythm on the table whenever someone drops a tray too loudly. At night, at her parents' kitchen table, she sits with a legal pad and a pen, writing down what she remembers for the judge. James says the chair hurts his back, but he takes it over the dreams. He jokes that the coffee tastes like battery acid and then asks for a third cup. She pauses, then adds, "Today he asked my name. He said it slowly, like he was making sure I was real." Another night. Marisol let me read one poem. It was about standing in the rain outside a locked door. She laughed when I cried at the last line. As the pages fill, the reports begin to sound less like assignments and more like something else. Witnesses, not just to what they have lived, but to what she has been ignoring. 2 weeks pass. When she walks back into the courtroom, it feels smaller than she remembered. Maybe it is the memory of the shelter's crowded dining room, or maybe it is the knowledge that this time she is not here to argue, but to admit. The gallery is fuller. News travels fast when a story involves money, disrespect, and a judge with a reputation for turning small cases into larger lessons. Robert sits near the front again, no vest this time, just the sweatshirt and the same steady presence. "Case of Ashford continued," the clerk calls. "Ms. Ashford, please step forward." She takes her place where she stood before, where she threw papers and declared that nothing really happens to people like her. Today, her hands are empty. "2 weeks ago," Judge Caprio says, "this court imposed a sentence. We are not here to renegotiate it. We are here to see whether you have begun to understand it." He regards her for a moment. "Have you complied with the terms so far?" "Yes, Your Honor," she says. Her voice is quieter, but it does not tremble. "I have completed 98 hours of community service, attended 2 counseling sessions, and participated in the driver responsibility course." "And have you prepared the statement we discussed?" "Yes." He nods once, then addressed the court. She unfolds a single sheet of paper. It shakes slightly at the edges, but when she looks up, her eyes are clear. "When I stood here before," she begins, "I believed this city owed me something, that my time mattered more than other people's safety, that if I moved fast enough and spent enough money, the rules bent around me." She glances briefly at Robert, then back to the judge. "I told a man who has spent his life protecting others that I owned him," she says. "I said I owned a street, a town, as if the lives on it were part of my property." She swallows. "I was wrong." There is no dramatic break in her voice, no theatrical sob. The honesty lies in the simplicity of the admission. "But at Horizon House," she continues, "I met people who have lost more than I have ever been asked to give. Homes, friends, the version of themselves they thought they would always be. I wiped floors they sleep on. I poured coffee into hands that shake when thunder rolls. I wrote down their names so I would not forget them when I went back to my own bed." She lets out a slow breath. "I went there because you ordered me to," she says. "I kept going, even when no one was watching, because I started to see something I had never bothered to look at before, the gap between what I thought I was owed and what I actually deserve." Her gaze rests on Robert. "Mr. Jennings," she says, "you should never have had to jump in front of my car. You should never have had to listen to a voicemail telling you that your life and your work could be bought. I cannot erase that message. I cannot rewind that day. But I can say this: you did not need to move for me. I needed to stop for you." The gallery is silent again, but it is a different kind of silence than before, less shocked, more attentive. "If this court allows it," she finishes, "I will complete every hour, every meeting, every condition of this sentence. Not because I am afraid of what happens if I do not, but because I am finally afraid of what happens if I go back to who I was before it." She lowers the page. For a moment, no one speaks. Then Robert stands. He does not lean heavily on his cane this time. His hand rests on it, but his posture is upright, the way it was when he stepped into the road with a stop sign raised. "Your Honor," he says, looking first at the judge and then at Victoria, "I accept her apology." The words land softly, but they carry more weight than any outrage could. "Not because what she did was small," he continues, "but because what she is doing now matters. We talk a lot about second chances in this country. They do not mean pretending nothing happened. They mean letting people carry what they did and still walk forward." He inclines his head toward Victoria. "She still has a lot of work to do, so do I. But I believe this is a better start than pretending those messages and that day in the crosswalk never existed." The judge regards him for a moment, something like quiet respect passing across his features. Then he turns back to Victoria. "Ms. Ashford," he says, The law cares about what you did. This court is also allowed to consider what you are becoming. She meets his gaze. This time, there is no defiance in it, only a wary steadiness. You will complete the remainder of your sentence exactly as ordered, he goes on. There will be no reduction in hours, no early return of your license, no adjustment to the financial penalty. Consequences do not shrink just because insight arrives. She nods once. I understand, she says. I hope you do, he replies. But understanding is not proven in here. It is proven out there. He nods toward the doors at the back of the courtroom. On streets that do not belong to you, in neighborhoods where no one knows your last name, in moments when there are no cameras and no court orders, only choices. He lets his hands rest on the bench. The official part is over. The human part is not. There is something else I would like you and everyone listening to think about, he says. He looks out over the gallery, but his focus seems to pass through it, beyond the walls, into living rooms and bus seats and late-night screens where people will replay this moment. And then, for the first time, it feels as if he is looking straight at you. Pause for a second, he says. If you were the one whose worst words were played on that speaker, how would you stand? Would you fold your arms and fight? Would you fall apart? Would you be grateful that someone stopped you there before a child stepped one step farther into the crosswalk? The question hangs in the air, and it does not belong only to Victoria. And if you were in Mr. Jennings's place, he continues, cane in hand, scar on your temple, listening to someone who once treated you like a traffic cone now say your name with respect, what would you do? Would you forgive? Would you turn away? Would you believe that people like her can change? Or would you decide that change is only a word people use to get out of trouble? He lets the silence answer for a moment. The way you answer those questions, he says, will tell you something about who you are, long after this case is closed. He looks back at Victoria one last time. Privilege without responsibility is not a gift, he says. It is a debt waiting to be collected. You have started paying yours. What you do after these 30 days decides whether that payment was the beginning of something or just the cost of getting caught. The gavel falls. It is not thunderous, it is precise, like a period at the end of a long, winding sentence. Court adjourns. Outside, the city moves as it always does. Cars roll past the courthouse steps, buses sigh at the curb. People check their phones while waiting at crosswalks, sure they can glance down and still make it across in time. Victoria descends the stone stairs slowly. There are cameras at the bottom, microphones hovering like curious insects. A few reporters call her name. For once, she does not accelerate toward them or away from them. She just keeps walking, straight past the cluster of lenses until the crowd thins and the sound of traffic replaces the clatter of questions. A few blocks away, she reaches an intersection. The painted lines of the crosswalk are faded, chipped at the edges where tires have rolled over them too many times. The signal shows a red hand. She stops. It is such a small action that on any other day she would not have noticed it. Today, she feels every second of it. The hum of engines, the impatient rumble of a truck behind her, the faint squeak of a stroller wheel nearby. A car approaches the intersection, a silver one. For one instant, her body braces, old habits twitching. She could step out, assume the car will brake, that the world will make room for her. The impulse flickers and dies. The car slows. The driver, a woman in a faded work shirt, lifts a hand in a brief gesture that says, "Go ahead." Victoria does not move. She waits until the signal changes, until the green figure appears and the world gives her permission instead of her taking it. Then she walks, not ahead of the line, but with it. On the opposite corner, a crossing guard in a bright vest raises a sign for a group of children gathering at the curb. It is not Robert. He is at Horizon House this morning, stirring a giant pot of oatmeal and pretending not to notice when someone sneaks an extra scoop of sugar. But the stance is similar. Feet planted, shoulders squared, body placed between moving metal and fragile bodies. As she steps onto the sidewalk, the guard nods to her. It is reflexive, a simple acknowledgement shared with dozens of faces each day. She nods back, but for her, the gesture is not casual. It feels like passing a torch she never had the right to hold in the first place. Later at Horizon House, she will pick up the coffee pot again. She will listen to James complain about the taste and ask for more anyway. She will check on Marisol's notebook and pretend not to see the tear she wipes away when she reads her own words aloud. She will write more names for the judge, but more importantly, she will remember them for herself. None of those moments will go viral. No one will clip them for a highlight reel. They are quiet, ordinary choices, stopping at a light, listening instead of talking, saying, "I was wrong," and then proving it in ways too small for headlines. But that is where real sentences are served, not just in days counted on a calendar, but in habits rewired, in reflexes rewound. Now, pause again. Not as a viewer of a viral courtroom clip, but as a person who has cut someone off in traffic, snapped at a stranger, sent a message you would not want played on a speaker. If your worst 30 seconds were projected on a wall and a judge asked you what you had done since then to become different, what would you be able to say? Do you know your own real price when you stand in front of someone you have hurt, and when there is no camera rolling, only their eyes? Dramatization for storytelling and education, not legal advice or reporting.